This Chinese censorship. Well, from that to management of its currency, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump criticizing the Chinese government for devaluing the yuan, calling the move a disgrace.
Why would anybody want to vote? It's impossible for the United States companies, within the United States, to compete with this kind of currency devaluation. And it's a serious problem, and we do nothing about it.
Some economists say what the Chinese government is doing is no different than the quantitative easing program of the Fed, recent moves by the ECB or Bank of Japan. BlackRock's chief investment strategist for fixed income, Jeff Rosenberg, with me now. Jeff, great to have you here. First and foremost,
thanks, Deirdre.
Do you agree on that point? All central banks are managing their economies the best they can.
Yeah, you know, the devaluation story is really filled with so much political intrigue here, and it's just not up to date that, you know, the Chinese have revalued their currency over the last 4 years or so quite dramatically. And so this degree of undervaluation and currency concerns is really from an earlier period. When we look at what happened over the last couple of days with regards to the currency, in some sense it was just marking to market the currency, what's called the fixing, which is basically how China manages its managed float system, marking its fixing level to where the market was. And the market was anticipating some devaluation. So this is really about opening up and freeing up monetary policy so that it can function, as your question asked, the way that other monetary policy functions in the rest of the world.
So that's a great point, Jeff, because China is obviously trying to control its system. Before the devaluation, we essentially saw them banning selling, right, from institutional investors, and we saw other, let's call them very heavy-handed moves. But here's the thing, they can control to a certain extent what happens on the mainland, but the world financial markets, capital markets, are global. So how are they going to manage even foreign investments leaving China?
Well, this is part of a long process of economic reform and liberalization. So China operates under a very different system the way that the rest of developed market systems work. It's had a closed capital account. It has closed investment accounts. It has a managed currency. And China has established a long-run plan for economic and financial reform. And some of the moves regarding the currency that we saw this week are trying to move them along the path. They're trying to do it in an orderly fashion so that it is not disruptive for the country, for the economy, and it's a terribly difficult process to manage. And I think what we saw here in the last couple of days is a pretty effective means of managing it. Now, it still remains to be seen where the currency goes, but they're trying to allow greater market forces. Right now, those market forces aren't really brought to bear because there's significant limitations on foreign involvement in the financial market. So it's really baby steps, the beginning of a new era, a beginning of market liberalization here.
Jeff, quickly, in your view, did China start a currency war by doing this devaluation?
No, not at all. And what I was saying a minute ago is basically to highlight that what China effectively did was to market, in a sense, its currency management process, that within the limited amount of flexibility that they are trying to introduce, they were just recognizing that the flexibility was pushing the currency towards a lower level. You know, when people talk about currency wars here, you know, it certainly isn't China who's necessarily starting this. You've had an environment.
Yeah.
You've had an environment for a long time where monetary policy is being pursued for domestic purposes, yet it has a currency consequence. Some people call that a currency war. Other people call that running appropriate domestic monetary policy.
Fair enough. Once again, the reminder, we are all connected. Jeff Rosenberg joining me there from BlackRock. Well, famously